Yeah, I can't talk right now.
All right, welcome. Happy Thursday. I'm Bob Krell. I'm founder and publisher of Healthy Indoors Magazine, and I'm your host for today's broadcast. Thanks for joining us, whether you're joining us online on our online Healthy Indoors global community or through various number of other social media platforms such as LinkedIn, Facebook, and yada yada. Welcome. If you are on the global community, we have a chat box there, so you're welcome to pose questions and/or comments, and we'll try to get them online. Today's guest is the president of Indoor Environmental Engineering, a San Francisco based indoor air quality consulting firm. He's been doing it 35 years or more. He's been an IAQ researcher, an IAQ investigator, a healthy buildings design consultant, and an expert witness. Please welcome Mr. Bud Offermann. Great to have you back on the show again.
Okay.
Live from San Francisco.
Yes. Home of the Grateful Dead.
There you go. There you go. And have you always been in San Francisco?
I moved from Carrier Country, Buffalo, New York, home of Willis Carrier,
Mm-hmm.
and who worked at Buffalo Forge, but they thought that air conditioning thing was a stupid idea. So he moved to Syracuse and started a small company
He
called
figured it
Carrier.
out with the psychrometric thing, made sense to
Yeah.
them.
I moved out from Buffalo in 1979, newly married and a big deadhead. And so San Francisco it became.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And I knew that actually. I remember we've had discussions in the past that you are originally an East Coaster,
Yeah.
upstate New Yorker. So
Yep. Yep. I
interesting.
had ice on the inside of my window bedrooms that thick, you know.
There you go. Yeah, the climate here is interesting, and which comes to today's topic. Today's subject, which you aptly put as spray polyurethane foam insulation, a great air barrier and thermal insulation product, or your worst nightmare. Which is like you're not shy of putting out controversial titles. You've done that before.
No, some people describe Terry Brennan as a really nice, soulful guy, and Bud's good too, but he's a little sharp. Yeah, I could be
Okay,
sharp.
yeah, we had Terry on a few weeks ago, and I've known Terry for years too. I wouldn't, so I still don't see you as sharp. Like you're not abrasively sharp. You're sharp as in really sharp to the point. Is it?
Yeah. And like when I did my snake oil article, I mean, I just needed to get the word out, to the kids and stuff, the
Mhm.
school districts, and so that's still working. I'm doing a lot of testing of ionizers and other kind of devices that schools have been put in um, around the country. So that's a big part. Yeah.
And you started your tour as a researcher at Lawrence Berkeley Labs, right? That's where
Yeah,
you.
yep. I got my start there at LBL. Yep.
And so that like how many years did you actually work as a researcher? Because I know you before you went
I
in the
was
private
there,
sector.
5 years, and I decided, I was kind of hitting the glass ceiling a little bit. I needed to get a graduate degree. Wanted to go to UC Berkeley because it's right down the hill from Berkeley at LBL, but couldn't get into Berkeley. So I had to go to Stanford, and ended up going to Stanford to graduate school. And then when I got to graduate school, worked a little bit at like a quote consulting company. I learned how to write a proposal, how to build clients, and that's when I really started indoor environmental engineering and got employees in that. But I actually started indoor environmental engineering when I was at LBL studying. It was actually on air cleaners. We were studying air cleaners for control of radon progeny,
Okay.
like a research thing, not just air cleaners.
Hmm.
And then it was the Federal Trade Commission, and there were these little devices that were basically just sensors. They put scent in the air. And
Hmm.
so I was on 60 Minutes with Dan Rather, and we
Oh, the things that did the esters for just the odors in the
yeah,
air.
they just had a citrus pad in the
Hmm.
bottom. Like Norelco was one of the companies. They were like cost $5.99.
Hmm.
They were just cheap things. But the Federal Trade Commission, unlike today, they stepped up and did something. And so, if any of you FTC people are out there, where are you today?
Well, you asked that question when you were on last year on the, talking about the ionizers.
You're right, exactly. And billions and billions of dollars later of devices that are at best iffy and potentially maybe not good, sold to school districts. And so there's a big class action suit now to recover that money for you and me because it's our tax dollars, right? And yeah, most of these devices that I've investigated don't do a lot for SARS-CoV-2 and potentially can cause some adverse health effects themselves. So the
Yeah,
best
and that's
thing is
and that's a big
just to
point.
close out. The best thing, of course, put in your MERV 13 or better filter.
Hmm.
That's the way to go. You don't need any for air cleaning, UV ionizers, PCO, any of that stuff.
Hmm. But that's not to say those technologies don't have a place, right, and a purpose. It's just that there were companies that rushed to market during the pandemic to push some technology out, making some grandiose claims.
Well, I got to say this that I haven't seen any of those, and we call them additive technologies.
Hmm. Right.
They add things to the air in in the purpose to inactivate or whatever. I haven't seen any that provide any benefit that you wouldn't get at a much cheaper cost than just a pleated air filter like a MERV 13. So that said, I mean
Okay.
UV has its place for like surface disinfection,
Sure.
but really, and then even upper room UV, it's not so controlled. There's not a fan,
Right.
so
Right.
that's just my professional opinion. Is that I stick with the portable air cleaners
Mhm.
that have HEPA filters or MERV 13s in your main system, and avoid the other bells and whistles for now.
Okay. I mean,
Right.
and that's reasonable. And I know that was there. There was quite a fervor. When you published that article, we
Yeah.
posted it. Yeah, lot of commentary about that article and the subsequent commentaries from
Yeah.
that article. We went
Let
all
me
over the
say this:
internet
I've
rapidly.
gotten an immense support from all the international community of researchers at getting the work out. A lot of the people are been scared because there's been a lot of lawsuits, right?
Sure.
And so they've been scared to step forward. I made the decision that I was going to put it out, so I did. But let's go back to SPF.
Yeah, because that's really the crux of the story for today.
Yep,
So, you did a remote presentation at Indoor Air 2022.
correct.
You weren't actually in Finland, but you streamed to them on the chemical emissions from spray polyurethane foam insulation in residences. So
Yeah,
you did a
and
little study
I
on this.
stand with Ukraine, right? So yeah, I didn't go to Kuopio. I've been to every indoor air conference that happens every 2 or 3 years for I don't know 30 years, but
Hmm.
I wasn't really ready for with COVID and then the whole Ukraine situation, a little too close.
Yeah.
I did. It was a great conference, and all of you listeners, you need to go to the site, download the papers. There's a lot of good information there.
So, your presentation wasn't a long presentation. I watched the video that was published on YouTube,
Yeah, there's.
um,
I
but
gave
you
you
got
the
to some
slide
points.
deck, but maybe only a couple slides are worth showing. Like maybe a picture of the foam, which is I think the next slide. So here. So for those of you that don't know, this is a great insulation product when it goes in right. The problem is if it doesn't go in right, it's really hard to get out. You can see in this photo, this is a typical installation in an attic. And so up against the roof deck, you can see the white foam. It's mixed on site. There's a 55-gallon drum out the truck of isocyanates. These are really toxic, but never a problem after application. Only a problem for the guy spraying it. And Bob, you have some experience with that, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting. We did back in earlier in my career in the 2008 through 2012 window. We got involved with our company doing basically building performance work.
Yeah.
So we did spray foam. I mean, I actually personally did about 200 applications myself. So I've had the opportunity to see what can go wrong with it too.
Right.
And as a consultant, I know you mentioned this in the pre-show that you've been called in on numerous properties that had issues, as have we, where there's subsequent off-gassing and people say they can't live in the space or, work in the
Right.
space.
Right.
So yeah, it's
Right. So
it's a challenge.
the thing is, the two components, the isocyanate, it's super toxic, like super glue stuff, right? And as you had to have like serious respiratory protection and stuff, supplied air for the applicator, but it's very reactive, and the isocyanates go away. It's all in the other 55-gallon drum, the resin drum, which has the polyol, the resin that reacts with the isocyanates, forms the foam, but also the fire retardants, surfactants, and all the additives. And that's the issue. Now, up front, I've got spray foam in my house. My home was built in 1888. It's Victorian in San Francisco, looks like one of the painted ladies.
Hmm.
But I sprayed the underside of my roof duct. I remember calling Betsy Steebrook up, and Joe's wife, and I said, "Hey, the roofer wants to put vents in my attic now that I've cathedraled up and put the foam
Hmm.
in." And she goes, "Why do you want to put vents in?" And
Hmm.
well, he said you should. He said no. So my roof runs a little hotter, probably.
Hmm.
But I'm in San Francisco. I'm good right now. But it's the B side of the foam that, and I don't think the liability for these cases where, and these people, this isn't just like a few days after it's installed. We're talking 8-10 months after it's installed. It smells. Sometimes you get the fishy smell, but
Hmm.
most all of them say fresh paint.
Hmm.
It's not a real obnoxious odor, but the eye irritation, the nose
Hmm.
irritation, and I'll get to this a little bit later, is a result of allyl chloride, which is a breakdown of the fire retardant, which is TCPP. And so it's these two things get mixed on site. So is it the mixing off ratio? I suspect sometimes, but I don't think the liability is necessarily the manufacturers, because my impression is that the prevalence of these bad foam jobs is not very high, in the low percentage number. The problem I have is when you does go bad, this is very sticky stuff. It's almost impossible to get out. And the for sure repair plan is to remove the foam and the substrate, because we've done some data where actually the foam chemicals, if you were to take them out, the substrate, the plywood or whatever you've sprayed it onto, to absorb some of the chemicals.
Hmm.
Um, so it's an expensive repair plan. A
Sure.
B plan would be, okay, if I'm in an attic and I got the foam, maybe instead of taking it out and taking the whole roof truss out and everything, that's 100% works. I mean, just like, if you had a moldy home, if you tear the home down, that works, right?
Sure. It's not necessarily the cost-effective way to approach it, but
Right.
it's an option.
But it's a guaranteed thing. Now, the other way would be to maybe this is the B plan, so to speak, is screw in foil face gypsum wallboard against the roof joists. Some kind of a vapor impermeable
Some
barrier,
yeah, non-perm barrier.
but some barrier, and it's not going to be 100%, but it could be high 90s and get you where you need to go, and you just leave it in place then. So,
We found a coating, and I can't remember the name of it. This was
oh
years back on a project we were on. It was an acrylic latex based coating, I believe, but it was used for gas permeance through slabs.
yeah, yeah,
And
like
I cannot
Armor,
remember the brand name, but we actually tested it with some failed SPF
yeah.
and actually coated it in this product. So same thing, taking the little micro chamber down to the mason
Yeah.
jar
Yeah.
situation and seeing if we could coat it with this, let it cure, and then put it in the jar, would we have the odor? And it actually worked.
Yeah. So I had one client do that before we got involved and do the testing, and he had already put like Zinsser,
Hmm.
like stain blocker,
Hmm.
like Kills,
Hmm.
similar like Surferol, I think was the chemical that's in it. So yeah, when we did that, we didn't see the TCPP or the allyl chloride or coming off from the foam in the microchamber. We just saw tons of Surferol. Um, and which doesn't have an exposure guideline either. But yeah, there might be some coatings, but maybe call me old fashioned. But when I got a chemical problem, I'm just reticent to like apply more chemicals on top of it. For one thing, your warranty's out the door.
Right.
The
Oh,
product.
and
And
I totally agree with that mindset, Bud.
yeah, yeah, I don't
Honestly, it
know
was like
about the
this is a client
reaction.
wanted to try this before going nuclear optioning and literally shredding the house.
Yeah,
And it's like, okay, we could try this, but they
right.
still weren't
No,
okay.
just a foil face barrier, I think, is it's just like with the additive air cleaner technology. You're playing a little bit of chemistry. We don't really know what we're doing, and it all depends on what chemicals are there and stuff. Same thing with putting chemicals on top of the foam.
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, just a physical barrier, I think, is a good B plan.
So your little study is interesting in that it showed that the prevalence of this, the things that you were finding off gassing got worse with time, not, which is like counterintuitive to VOCs and stuff, right? Normally you would expect
Well,
they would get less over
yeah.
time.
Well, first of all, is it going to go away? The emissions are going to last like um, tens of decades, all right? Or like not tens of decades, but 50 to 100 years. So the emission rates are rather slow, but there's so much of this in the foam that it's not going to go away in a month, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. But yes, the emission rates will slowly and go down, but they don't go up in time. But what they do go up in time is with temperature. So the spray foam testing season is the summer. And that's when people that have installed it, they notice that the irritation and odor are much worse when the roof deck's 140 degrees F and it's pushing those chemicals out, right?
Mhm,
So in the winter, maybe not such a, we're back East Coast or
mhm,
whatever, not so much. So when we're usually testing these, it's in the summer during a hot day, not when it's raining, but we try to get a kind of a worst case
mhm.
situation that's not unusual, just a hot, clear sun day with all the windows and doors closed, right? And yeah, and then our protocol for these investigations is two things. And I do a lot of litigation, right? So, number one, is there a problem? So that means air testing. That means all the windows and doors are closed. There's no special air cleaners running, just like you would do for a mold inspection. Come into the place and test it with all the windows open and air filtration devices running. So it's closed up from the night before, and then the air sampling involves. And I'm not. I guess I'll throw a pitch out here just because I'm hooked at the hip with Berkeley Analytical Associates. We were both scientists at LBL. And so this is a heads up for any of you that are contemplating doing air testing for a spray foam job that is perceivably causing you irritation and everything. Certainly call me. I've got air testers around the country. But the problem is with some of the air testers, if just left on their own, they just do a set list, a TO 15 or whatever of 63 chemicals. And you
Mhm.
don't want to do a set list, but there's no need to. When Al Hodgson and I at Berkeley Analytical are doing an investigation of a thing, we measure all the VOCs that come off the mass spectrometer, up to like, a couple micrograms per cubic meter. And then you find out with all the windows and doors closed, you measure in the attic, maybe down in the living space, and of course outside because defense is going to say, hey, those chemicals are outdoors, aren't they, Mr. Offerman?
Right.
And then you find out you got a problem. It's usually allyl chloride, sometimes BDMAEE, which is another culprit that causes a lot of irritation. And there's just usually a lot of TCPP, the fire retardant,
Mhm,
but there's no exposure guidelines for it. As we were talking before the
mhm.
show, that doesn't mean when you don't have an exposure guideline, it's
Right.
safe.
It
And
hasn't been defined.
usually I got a CAS number, a CAS number that's really long, meaning it's
Okay.
pretty new, and they just haven't done the stuff on it right now. So then you're just the guinea pig. We'll see. But so we do the emission rate, the testing in the space. all the windows and doors closed. And then after, and this is important because I made a mistake one time and I cut my foam sample out before the test. Well, that ruptures a lot of these cells and makes the concentrations much, much higher. So you want to do your air test first. Then we cut out like about an 8-inch by 8-inch huge hunk of the foam without disturbing that skin on the surface that faces the air or whatever. And then it gets wrapped in a couple layers of foil and the sampling tubes, which are thermal desorption tubes. And then the foam sample gets sent back to Berkeley Analytical. They do the microchamber test. And lo and behold, you find high concentrations in the home, and the microchamber shows high concentrations of the installed foam. So that's how we do it.
And the constituents that you are identifying there, you've said they're associated with the B side component, right? With the resin side component. Because
Right.
the polyisocyanate, the isocyanates are fairly toxic too, but they do flash off, right? They're happening during the
They
application
react.
time, they're super high.
They're super reactive. They just go away on their own. I mean, for the applicator like you, super bad. You get serious, supplied air, a respirator, So
I can't tell you how many I've been on job sites so many times seeing applicators wearing full face APRs. Wearing just regular masks without a supplied airline. I
oh
mean,
yeah, you can't
less
filter.
so now, but they never ventilated. And I can't tell you how many times I'd see guys with multiple trucks, multiple proportioners on a commercial site with 3, 4 guys in there just wearing full face masks with carbon
Yeah.
cartridges. And I'm like,
Well,
no,
for the guys that are using paint stripper in the bathroom to paint strip the bathroom and they're not wearing a respirator and don't have air, you won't hear from them because they're dead.
yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's a sad thing though. I've done a bunch of those cases, and fortunately, that's off the market now. There's you can't get a paint stripper with
Right.
methylene chloride because that'll kill you.
Yeah.
What else do we have about the? You were saying just now about the the big thing is everyone is using TCPP
As the fire retardant.
Yeah, it's a long name. Tris 1-chloro 2-chloro phosphate. Anytime you hear phosphate, we're talking fire retardant. And but basically, let's go to that slide if you can, like it's slide 6 or something, right? Or it was the showing it. Keep going.
You're looking for the charts?
Oh yeah,
That one.
okay. First of all, kudos. Who knows Bernie Bloom? Bernie Bloom was a colleague of mine, and I got to attribute this chemistry to him. Unfortunately, Bernie passed away last year, and he lived a long life. He was a great guy. He worked for NASA. Super smart guy, and did a lot of work in spray foam. And he and I collaborated on a few things. So in the paper I gave, you put kudos to him. So look at this TCPP molecule. It's a big molecule. Phosphorus in the middle, like a lot of fire retardants. It's got 3 arms of chlorinated hydrocarbons on it. And if you look, if you get a little water mixing with the TCPP, so how do these bad jobs happening? Is it mixing in the A and the B? Maybe, but I think more often it's the storage of the resin in the warehouse that it gets moisture or whatever, or even after it's installed, perhaps even humidity or whatever is causing. But the reaction is TCPP plus water equals 1-chloro-2-propanol. Neither TCPP or 1-chloro-2-propanol have any exposure guidelines. And go to the next slide, because now the 1-chloro-2-propanol can be with a metal catalyst like copper or other metals, can convert then to allyl chloride. You can see the resemblance of it, of these chemicals. They're just a hop, skip, and a jump. Allyl chloride, it was suspected as being a carcinogen, but it's not anymore. But it's a severe, like a very potent irritant for upper respiratory, eyes, nose, mouth. So when you talk to people that have had a bad spray foam job, they have the odor. Most of them are saying kind of fresh paint smell, but the big thing is the eye irritation, nose irritation, mouth irritation.
What's interesting too is that And you mentioned this, or a few moments ago, um, that there you suspect that there might be more issues with the application of the product as opposed to the product's formulation, from the
Yes.
manufacturers. And I concur with that, because one of the problems that I see with spray foam is that it is field applied, it's field mixed. It's one of the few products that you mix chemicals in the field and you let
Right.
technicians do that in real time without any
Right.
real quality control sometimes, right? So there's so
Right.
many variables. You've got the temperature of the substrate you're applying to, you've got your
Yep.
mix ratio, you've got your pressure, you
Right.
got the temperature of the chemicals in the
Right.
barrels. Up here in the north, it gets cold in the winter.
Right.
And then you've got the other issue, how deep you put the lift in, how much
Oh,
spray
right.
foam at a time, because some of these closed cell foams, if you put too much, they don't cure, you have
Right.
improper curing and they're goo in the center. And
Right. Yeah, I did that just the other day. It was doing just a can of spray foam, sealing up in my attic, an opening, and I kind of stuffed it with paper so I didn't have to put so much foam on it. But
Mhm.
I put it on too thick, and then when I went to trim it with the bread knife, gooey.
Yeah, it didn't cure. And,
It
and, and that we've seen that with closed cell foam where, I don't think there's any closed cell foam manufacturer that allows you to put on more than 3 inches at a time.
Yeah.
That's usually the 2 pound closed cell foam is about 3 inch max. Some are less. And I've seen applications where installers will put in like 8 inches in one pass, and the center looks like honey almost. It's just
Yeah.
totally not cured, and
Yeah.
the odor is just horrific.
Yeah. And then you're getting the fishy smell.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
amines, right?
Yeah. So I have like literally 30. Now, here's a little thing for a do it yourself thing. If you suspect that you're having an issue with smell or something from your spray foam, or for anything that you can put in a jar, it doesn't cost anything. Just get yourself a 1 pint wide mouth canning jar. And if you want to prove, because a lot of the foam companies, you get their safety data sheet for the A side, the B side, the resin, but a lot of them have it also for the finished product. And if you go to the finished product safety data sheet, you look under physical characteristics, I think section 8,
Mhm.
sometimes they'll say odor, and sometimes they'll say none. Okay. Well, I don't know that they're going to give you a check to fix it just based on a bell jar with their foam, put in it, seal it up, and then open it up and say, "Does that smell like nothing?" And most of mine, I have a couple with a little bit of too much of the catalyst, the
Mhm.
amine, the fishy smell.
Right.
Most of all my jars, and I got a lot of them, are the kind of strong, fresh paint smell,
Mhm.
not kind of sweet almost, not fishy or bad or
Mhm.
whatever. Yeah, but you can do that. Anytime you're doing a diagnostics for odor, for you indoor air quality people and stuff. You don't usually need a lot of chemical analysis for that. We're talking odor. So
Yeah.
you can take stuff, put it in jars, stuff like that.
Well, that makes sense anyway from an indoor air quality standpoint, because granted you're using your client as a canary, but the reality is the actual levels in parts per billion or parts per million is irrelevant. It's really what the reaction of the occupant is, right? So if
Right,
somebody takes a whiff and they react to it, that's
right, right,
kind of a medieval way to do it, but I mean it's true.
right. It is absolutely
I mean,
true.
that's really the test that matters. What's interesting, and we did a lot of that over the years too, doing cross sections and taking pieces of foam and putting them in mason jars and doing that. And I would say that if it was properly mixed, properly applied, and somebody really measured the parameters and did it right and applied it properly and did the timings right and everything, and then allowed it to sufficiently ventilate for 24 hours, usually there's not too much odor. If it's
Yeah. So
it does you can really vary that a lot by your application practices, I think.
yeah. So here's the other thing. We have something out here called architectural specification 1350 01350. And it transformed the marketplace in the United States and the world. I mean, now you have to test the chemical emissions of pretty much all building products. And this kudos to Leon Alvarez, one of my colleagues from California Department of Health Service, who headed up the 1350 standard. And we did the big study with him up at the Capitol East End project in Sacramento, I don't know, 20 years ago. But all these things are changed now. So even all the products are measured. Of course, we have a special thing in California, which has now been adopted by the rest of the United States, for measuring formaldehyde emissions from composite wood products. It's all regulated.
Mm-hmm.
But this is beyond formaldehyde. And by the way, formaldehyde, we don't measure for formaldehyde with spray foam cases. It's not the issue. It's not a chemical that's created or reaction product. So save your money. Don't test for isocyanates. That's the big disingenuous thing from the applicators or even let's say the manufacturers. Oh, well, let's test for isocyanates. I think
They're not going to be there.
They know it's going to come back negative.
Yeah. Unless you're testing for that right when the application is taking place, when it's actively being applied, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, but this 1350 test, so you can get it. The Green Guard is another one. They do all these tests of the product. The problem is the 1350. It's like baby steps. We're only going to ask people to report these 30 or 40 chemicals, but to pass, to get the that you're approved as a product, you only test for the 30 or 40 chemicals. So when you get the compliance sheet for your foam made by either Berkeley Analytical or UL or whatever, there is a full report behind it that measures all the chemicals. But they, at this time, they just started with the pass-fail for these 30 chemicals. So, but if you want to know all the chemicals that they measured, you can. You just have to ask for it, and you probably have to sign an NDA. But the other thing is that it's only done at room temperature, and it's a factory. I'm talking about SPF now. Mm-hmm. It's a factory prepared sample, so it's perfect, right?
Right. They've got the parameters exactly right, temps and everything.
And they only go up to like I don't know. They don't go up to TCPP. You have to run your gas chromatograph mass spectrometer out to catch TCPP. And you really need it at high temperature. Now, here's another thing that was in our paper. When we're doing and you mentioned it yourself, so you must have done it or whatever, microchamber. Mm-hmm. It's the size of a hockey puck is the sample, right? And it's ultra pure air, but it's dry. But it's hot. It's run at 35 degrees C, so it's got like a hot roof temperature. Mm-hmm. But the dry air, you don't get any hydrolysis reactions like you would get with normal air. So that's a little bit of a drawback, and I understand it's not so easy to provide the humidified source to the microchamber test. But then we don't see the 1-chloral-2-propanol, which is the first hydrolysis product.
And you think that happens from the ambient moisture, just where the product maybe is applied?
Yeah, well, that's what gives me think it's not just moisture attacking it in the resin $55 drum. There's also like perhaps a hydrolysis happening with the foam, and most of the cases I've been doing are open cell, but there's been some closed cell, so it's not like one is like free of risk.
We have different aspects with the two chemicals, because the open cell has a tendency, from my experience, to cure better because it's it breathes. Whereas the closed cell, if you put a second layer or a third layer on too soon before the previous layers cure, you really have that opportunity to screw up. That second and third layer can get really bad really quick.
And I'm sure that's a lot of pressure on the applicator because time is money, and
and they don't want to wait. I mean, the reality is you put the first pass on, usually in a room. By the time you're done with that first pass, the 2 inches or whatever your first pass depth is, you usually can put the second pass on if you're going for a 6-inch buildup right away. But it's the third pass. You got to get down below 100 degrees Fahrenheit with that product before you, and with a lot of the products like BASF and some of the other ones, before you put a third layer on it, or that second layer doesn't cure properly because you actually trap it in its own heat. It's an endothermic reaction going on there. And you basically put R14 over the top of that reaction.
Yeah. So here's another Bernie Bloom tribute. Bernie said, if you want to put in spray foam, the way to do it is or not spray foam. If you want to put in foam insulation, go with the factory made foam panels, right? Now, that won't give you the air barrier performance that a spray foam application will.
Sure.
but it's got super high R value. But the point I'm going to make here is it's made in a factory, you know, under and if the bad batch, I mean, they smell it, they do QA QC, and we recycle it and we make a new one.
Mhm.
But all that's out the door with spray foam in the field, mixing it, all those variables you said. So for that reason alone, because the repair is not simple, so I won't recommend it to anyone right now. Spray foam, I just can't. Although like I said, the title
And
of
it does perform well when it's
it's a
properly
great
applied. That's the
product.
sad
I've got
part,
it in my house
Mhm.
right here. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
lucky, or maybe not lucky. It's just it's those few individuals, rather small prevalence, I think, that where it goes bad. But the downside is so big that
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, the thing is, I guess, so that there's a point for, I know there's certified applicator programs, and a lot of the manufacturers have that. One of the other horrors that we ran into a lot were applicators that would switch from closed cell to open cell foam.
uh,
And I heard this so many times in the field from applicators saying that, oh, the A sides are the same for all the products, so they just switch the B barrels and
uh,
fire the A part. So now in the field they're mixing a totally new product, sometimes different brands A side with a B side. I mean, that happens a lot, but you have no idea
whoa.
how much, because they don't want to bother, dealing with two transfer pumps, so they just leave the one in on the A side and go.
Well, here's another one.
So they're
Um,
making a random chemical in the field.
Here's another one. I just did a case with bad application. It happened to be, again, I don't think it's the manufacturers, okay? But it happened to be BASF product, spray foam. But then the people that sell the resin to the applicator, they buy it from BASF, and then apparently to adjust it for climates, they add more chemicals.
Yeah, there's a winter, so yes, in the
I didn't.
Northeast, there's winter mix. They call it winter mix.
Oh, see,
So
I
they
and that
actually
was
do, yeah, and I can't remember what the actual change is, but they changed some a component. I thought it was on the B side, but it's on the A side, you're
yeah.
saying they
No,
changed it?
no. I just know that for this case, I asked BASF for the chemicals, and to date they haven't disclosed them the chemicals. But it didn't matter. I don't need it for our work. We're
Right.
measuring. It is TCPP in this particular BASF product, and it had BDMAEE in it, but it's when I talked further with the construction people, they said, yeah, we actually bought the product from this other company that takes the BASFs and then adds chemicals. I said, well, let's ask them what.
Oh, aftermarket, they're adding chemicals to a
Yeah.
product?
So they're the
Ooh,
distributor of the BASF product.
that seems
And
questionable.
yeah, I just said, well, um, for this legal case, let's ask them what they added. Although we don't need to because we already measured what it's emitting and what's
Sure.
in the home, and it was bad, and we don't really care whose fault it was, applicator, distributor that added the stuff, whatever. They can point fingers, but I
Yeah.
was just curious from a scientific
Yeah.
what they add. But it
That
was for, like you said, a climate adjusted product.
Yeah, and it's on the resin side, because the problem is the resin, when it gets colder, the viscosity gets a lot thicker, and
Uh,
you get off ratio. The A and B side, you can't match them because one's thicker than the other. So then you have to like mess around with your line temperatures and and driving the pressure up on the B side. There's a lot of like throttling to try to make things even out. But again, there's so many variables.
and Bob, so with the off ratio thing, because I've always trotted that out as a potential for the cause of the bad foam. Now I'm
It's
on to
it's
this.
one of
Yeah, so now I've been more keening in on the hydrolysis of the TCPP. But in your experience, when it is off ratio, what is there too much of or too less of, and what are the physical attributes that are bad from either an odor or appearance thing? Is it
got
too
it.
much?
Okay.
Too much?
If there's too much A, it tends to get kind of fragile and brittle. You see the crunchy crystalline effect. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
talking on closed cell foam. On if you're too B side rich, it tends to stay gooey and not cure. It can stay soft.
Yeah.
So so that's I mean that's and that varies based on temperatures and a lot of other
Yeah,
stuff. But
because here's what'll happen if you have a bad foam job and then you approach the applicator. He'll call in the manufacturer. The manufacturer will take a sample of the foam, and the report will consist of a picture of the foam and says that it looks good. I mean, there's no chemical emission testing.
right,
It looks good,
it looks good. Or
and,
sometimes it doesn't look good. If they find it gooey in the center, they don't like that.
yeah, that could be, but all the ones I've seen is it looks good. Yeah, and then but they got to do what they got to do, and
Yeah.
they that's usually what happens. They take a sample, and then after many weeks, you get back and it looks good.
Yeah. We had a question from one of our audience members.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it up on the screen here. So Patrick's asking, are you suggesting, Bud, that moisture gets into the drums during long-term storage before the factory seals are removed?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I just know that there's a potential for hydrolysis of TCPP to go to 1-chloral, 2-propanol, and that's a hop, skip, and a jump from allyl chloride. Does that occur in the drum? Maybe. We don't know. It needs to be researched for sure. I mean, I think the conclusion, could it also just happen when you already have the foam installed and just from humidity? I don't know. I think the hydrolysis reaction of TCPP is plausible, and I think it is researched because is TCPP an appropriate fire retardant um, for spray foam? I don't know, but so
And that's a common
that's
one.
an
I mean, I
excellent question.
wasn't familiar with that.
I just
That's a
don't know.
common fire retardant, Bud, in a lot of the ones you've
In a
seen?
lot of foam, not just in your stuffed furniture, and there was another. I looked at the Indoor Air 2022 where I gave this one. There was another one on uh, uh, polyurethane foam chemical emissions, but it was for like cushions and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But that was an excellent question, and I don't know. I do believe the hydrolysis is a potential bad thing. I don't know, why we don't have foam that's bad all the time. Then, if there's TCBB in there,
Yeah.
so
That
I don't.
well, I
I
mean,
just
it could
don't
be
know.
different environmental conditions. I suspect that very few applicators leave their drums open.
Yeah,
I mean, the A side is pretty volatile, so you can't if you leave the A side open, you'll destroy it.
right.
And the B side, I mean, it's resin, but still, yeah, I guess it could get moisture in if you
I don't
left it
know.
if the lid off it, but
Let's say you had a third of a drum full, and it's full of humid air because you just
there
can't.
because they don't you don't purge
And
them.
it's there for 2 months. I don't know. That could be, but these are the things that the polyurethane foam industry needs to look into. I think because it is happening across the country. Not a huge prevalence rate, I don't think,
Hmm.
but it's a nightmare when it does happen to your home, and so I think it deserves some research.
We were getting pretty high tech with it early on because when we were dabbling with spray foam, we were as an indoor environmental remediation company, so our whole thing was indoor air quality, and we were just doing these corrective measures on the building performance side. And so, we were over the top in 2008, 2009 with ventilation. We'd set up, full containments and ventilation. And we even got to the point where we took nitrogen and would actually pump the drums when you're done for the day, pull the transfer pumps and
Oh,
pump nitrogen into the tank to actually displace the oxygen and moist air out of it. So you
wow!
can, I mean, you can if
But this
you know
is
if you get a little more tech with it, you actually can make this stuff operate pretty much dead
right.
nuts on,
So it's not even a huge research plan, a program
No.
to study it, but let's confirm this hydrolysis reaction pathway. What are its roots? Is it like in the drum or is it whatever?
Yeah.
But once we know it, there's all these great ingenious ways that we can make it so that this great product that's a great air barrier can be used reliably 100% of the time. Yeah, but we're not there right now. So
Yeah, I think
you're
it
rolling
comes
the
down to
dice a little
education
bit.
too. Comes down to education. The technicians that do the application need to be properly trained and understand the products, and each product's different. You switch brands, there's little nuances to even using the different brands with temperatures and things like that, and you do need to understand your products because you are.
Well, let's get the robots out there then.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting though, because this is you do have, with our whole desire to make buildings more energy efficient, lower our carbon footprint. Obviously, it it does seem like, this product is a viable product to make buildings perform better, right? Be more airtight, be able to control unwanted air intrusion, and be able to, create a pretty good U value on that wall assembly, to be able to do that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I guess we need to do more study, right? Because we need to figure out when there are failures, why they're happening, and so we can prevent them, right? So
Right.
what's your takeaway from your
Yeah.
study and this whole thing?
Well, I think that this my conclusions in the what was it, the here it is. I'll just look at them.
You want to see?
What
Oh,
were they?
I can get
All
that up
right,
there for
I
you. Hang
got
on, let
it.
me.
Okay, you can put them up, whatever. But it's at the very
Oh,
last slide.
conclusions. That slide. There we
Yeah.
go.
Okay, so some SPF installations, underline some, and I think personally not a high percentage, but it could be in the few percent, result in chemical emissions that cause odor and irritation. That and the persistence of it. You just do the emission rate and how much is in the foam. We're talking, 50 to 100 years. Now, alloy and 1-chloro-2-pro appear to be hydrolysis initiated TCP reaction products. Appear, you know. The air concentrations of these SPF chemicals, we've definitely seen they increase with outdoor air temperature. That's probably a no-brainer for most people to understand that, like just like when you put the kettle on the water and on the heat it up, emission rates go up with
Sure.
higher temperature. Emissions of oral allyl seem to be one of the potent sensory irritants that we're dealing with. It. So the final thing, though, what takeaway? We need further research now to understand the chemical reactions of TCPP and its suitability as a fire retardant. So that means like, where is this hydrolysis reaction happening? And if so, where is it happening? Is it happening in the drum? Is it happening in the application? What are the issues with, besides the physical ones you mentioned, Bob, about too much A getting a crunchy one, or too much B getting a gooey one?
Hmm.
From a chemical emission side, and I think I don't have it in front of me, but ASTM has a standard out now. I think its due date for review is pretty soon, but it's for measurements of chemical emissions during the application. So
Okay.
isocyanates,
Which is a different, yeah, it's a different profile. That's more of a
different,
concern for the applicator.
yeah, a different thing. But so there is some work being done by ASTM on that thing. But yeah, I think we need to find out the issues, and I think allyl chloride is one of the main sensory culprits here, along with BDMAEE, which is the that particular amine compound that's in some of them. So you can get this paper. I don't think I posted it on our website yet, but for any of you that just write me, any of your listeners, I'll send you the paper from Indoor Air 2022. Um, Otherwise, I think you have to buy the proceedings or something.
Probably, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's why we had your video and I didn't post it, because I have a feeling ISIAQ wouldn't be pleased with me if I did that.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I signed anything like that, but
Oh,
it's like my snake oil article. I was like, got to get the word out, and
right.
damn the torpedoes.
And that's okay to take that approach. I know, we have a pretty good working relationship with ISIAQ, because
Yeah,
we do the other show for them. We do the indoor environment show.
right.
Um, and yeah, but it is, you raise interesting questions, because and for me especially too, because I've had my hands in this over the years, and I really believe that more of the issue was on the isocyanate side, and which I think there is an issue with that during the application time. If you're not properly ventilating, I
Mhm.
mean, leaving occupants in the building when you're spraying with that stuff, that's not
Right.
necessarily the greatest thing.
No,
You
no,
know,
it's definitely really bad, super bad during the application. But
Yeah, and there's a lot of documented medical evidence that applicators in that and the auto body paint industry, when you're dealing with those polyisocyanates, you get sensitized and you really can't handle those anymore at a certain point
yeah,
if
yeah,
you're exposed enough.
yeah, it's super super low exposure guidelines for that stuff.
Yeah, and that was always my big concern, and even walking on a job site as a consultant, when seeing a foam applicator and seeing them just wearing like an APR mask, a full face mask with carbon cartridges. I'm like, no, that is. Oh, we've got respirators. And I go, no, that's not the safety equipment you're supposed to be wearing. You're supposed to have outside air. You're not supposed to breathe this at all.
Yeah, when I first did my in November of 2020, started the pandemic, I did like it was a mold inspection, and I put on my PAPR. I trotted that out. I got the pump on my belt. It actually the place was unoccupied, but I was just like being extra cautious. And then I forgot that the full mask PAPR doesn't work with my glasses.
Oh yeah, unless you have
So,
one of those frames or something.
yeah, I didn't. So I could put it on, but without glasses. So I couldn't really write down the start of the pump time and stop of the pump time and stuff like that. I had to kind of memorize it, then go outside, take my things off. But
I
yeah,
early on in 2020, I was at going to the local grocery store because we really locked it down for quite a few months in my house. And yeah, I was wearing I was going to a grocery store wearing a P100 mask, going to a Wegmans with with that on. And let me tell you, you get some looks. But I was like, hey, I have this equipment. I don't know how transmissible this is, early on, and I didn't have a
yeah.
problem with that.
Yesterday I was at a major hospital commissioning a new operating room, and so I was in the hospital all day, amongst in the in the intensive care unit with all these sick people and stuff like that. So I definitely had my mask on. I was all gowned up in a
Hmm.
suit, and for that test for that particular hospital was testing viable like fungi and bacteria in the air, and also like particle counts and stuff. And it was kind of a I tried to get the picture because I wanted to share it with your group here. So it was a gorgeous operating room. It's called a hybrid operating room, meaning they have the imaging there and the surgery suite
Oh, right, all together.
all together. So
That
you
is
don't have to go
interesting.
down the hall to that. But it was just, it looked like Johnny Ives, if you know him. He's an Apple guy, was
Okay.
an Apple guy. He designed all the Apple stuff. So Bauhaus kind of design school,
Hmm.
beautiful, soft curves.
Hmm.
Everything's white, right?
Right, right. So
Just a gorgeous operating room. And so, as you know, in this business, you get to go to a lot of places. And well,
some of them are not that desirable too.
I'll tell you the
Right?
sad thing.
You
I'll
see the
just share
ugly side of things that nobody else sees.
here's the sad thing. I do a lot of mold inspections for tenants. Usually, I'm working for a law firm representing the tenants, and bless their souls that there are law firms that will take on the cases for these tenants. These are low income housing. It is. It just makes me cry. It is so sad to walk in and see the conditions that are in these places. And for those of you listening that are mold inspectors and everything, a couple things I'll just leave with you that I get these reports by my desk all the time. Of course, the windows and doors should be closed, and all air purifiers should be off, either during the pre-mitigation assessment or post-mitigation. But the other thing is moisture is super important. Now, the ACGIH bioaerosol, it's the red book, it's the Bible of bioaerosols, including mold, is being revised right now. I'm on the committee. And one of the really important things for mold inspectors is to do your best to check the ventilation out. So in an apartment, oftentimes it's just openable windows.
Right.
Oftentimes in some of these low income stuff, there's a bedroom and there's no window. This is against the code. And so for legal cases, when you have code violations, that's really good to put. And also open the window. Does it open? No, they're all painted shut. They don't
Right.
open. Otherwise, it should be a minimum of 4% of the floor area for each room. So you go measure the floor area, easy. Double hung window or slider, just, opening. Awnings and casement windows, you drop a perpendicular line from the glass to the edge where it closes.
Okay.
That's it. The
Oh,
little
because you don't get to
triangle.
open. You don't get to full open.
Well, I'm
ones.
wondering, like, do you count the little triangles on the side? No.
Oh, right, because you're picking those up too.
It was the Germans that figured this out. The effective area for a casement or an awning, drop a line perpendicular to. So if it's open 90 degrees, it's the full thing. And if it's open just halfway, you just drop that perpendicular to the closed edge, and then the width.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's really. I think it's important for mold, and then of course get your energy conservatory. I hate to drop lines here, but they make a great little exhaust hood. It looks like something you wash your dishes in. It just puts it up against the bathroom fan. And you use your DG 700 or whatever.
Right.
To measure the pressure.
So you're old school too. You still have DG 700s.
I know. I
still have a couple of them.
I want the new one. Oh, I got even older ones than that, but they're great. But yeah, measure the exhaust fan, and I don't mean to throw lines out, but if you're got lower income or multifamily home, put in the Panasonic Whisper Green fan. Program it to run at a low speed all the time.
Right, you get
and
some ventilation.
One switch in the wall that turns on the light, flips it into high speed. When you turn the light off and go, it stays on for 10 minutes.
Right.
Don't buy the RH sensor. Just program it like that. And
that makes sense.
Your lower income places that are struggling with condensation and stuff, well, that's a good line of defense.
Yeah, I mean that certainly makes sense. Obviously, it seems that the most underserved communities obviously have the lower demographic housing, which is in the worst repair, and which these are the people that have the worst medical outcomes, right? I mean, it's like it snowballs. I mean, they're not, you have poor medical outcomes, so people are in bad environments.
And oftentimes they're immigrants, and so they don't speak up, and it just breaks my heart. I mean, I just come home, I'm just a mess afterwards. I just can't believe that people are allowed to live in a place like that.
Yeah, and people profit from it, which is even more.
It's awful.
I hear you.
But we're suing him every day, so.
Yeah, I mean the problem is there seems to be ugly heads that can rear themselves as soon as you get rid of some. You think it's just a never-ending socioeconomic battle in this country. I think it's frustrating. Yeah. Well, we're getting to the point where we're almost out of time. This went fast, Bud. Which I expected it would.
It's always good to talk to you, and especially this time, I did not know you got your former SPF applicator.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you reached out to me with your paper, I said, yeah, this is like really, really interesting. Oh, it's interesting. Pat put another one in here, and let me just flash this one up here because I think this is an interesting one for you to comment on. This is a follow-up question I didn't see until just now. Bear with me, I'll get it on the screen.
It's always the tough question that comes at the end.
Right at the end. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to get part of it. Okay. So he did a 3 lift, 6-inch total, so 2 inch at a time, probably, right? Shaved all the walls flush to 5.5. The odors during the application were strong as usual, but the odors while shaving, and I'll read the rest of it, the foam back to wall depth were worse. What would cause that?
I don't know.
As you were shaving, because you're shaving the coat, the sealed edge off.
Well, I know, having done that for one job where I collected my foam sample, it was a couple hours before I did the air sample, but when you cut those, you'll notice it when you do the jar test, when you break the foam up, it really smells. You're rupturing these cells and stuff like that. The odors during application were strong as usual, but the odors while shaved, oh yeah. So I think you're just, and then that goes away in an hour or two. So,
Yeah,
you
that's ventilation's critical, during application, immediately after. I
yeah.
always took exception with applicators that would allow families to stay in a house when they're doing application.
Oh,
To
and
me,
why?
and allow pets to stay in the house. It's like, get your pets out too. Your
Yeah,
dog shouldn't be there breathing that stuff either.
yeah. And if you have a canary, it'll be dead.
There you go.
So this was a little quick one, but your brand new oven that you put into self cleaning mode. For those ovens that had insulation with urea formaldehyde insulation, now a lot of manufacturers of insulation, like I think Owens Corning's, have gone to acrylic binders, and you
Mhm.
don't have this problem. But it was like an issue. The first time they did the self cleaning in the oven with UF resin insulation, their bird died. You can look it up on the internet.
That's not good.
Yeah, and you always wondered that when you're making the ovens, why don't at the end of the line, why don't they just do one self cleaning operation? Because it's only the first self cleaning one that bakes everything off and would
That
make the bird die.
yeah, right. Because once you've done that, then you don't have those constituents aren't coming out of the
No,
device.
they only have the binder in there for the fabricators and
Mhm.
everything. But once it's all inside the thing, they don't need the binder, and it bakes off during the first.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, we covered a lot of territory in a short amount of time. So I was thinking back when Terry Brennan was on about a month and a
I'm
half
his
ago.
soulmate.
I know that you guys are close, but I'm thinking of the first time I met you, and I believe it was at. Remember when EPA had a train the trainer for the building air quality? It was either
Yeah,
in Alexandria, Virginia, or in Crystal City. I can't remember where they held it. We met at
we're
that because I was. It was a couple day
we're
event.
was that with Susan Womble?
Yes,
And yeah,
Bill Turner
I
and
remember
Richard
relaxing out
Shaughnessy.
on some big rock with a bunch of folks afterwards. We had some beers and stuff. It was fun.
Anyway, that was an interesting time, but that was like 1992 or 93. That's a
I
long
know.
time ago.
I know.
Where'd they go, bud?
Yeah, I don't know,
Those years went fast.
but I'm not going anywhere. I love my work. It's
You can see it though. You have a passion for it, and that was my kind of closing question for you is so you've been in the industry a long time, a little bit longer than me. I think you're I don't know if you're older than me or not, but we're
I'm
in
born in '53, so
oh a lot older. Okay, I was born in '59, so you're 6 years older than me.
mhm,
So you've been at it for a long time in the industry.
mhm.
But you're gonna keep riding it.
Yeah. So if I was just having to do the same thing over and again, I'd probably be tired of it. But the forensic work, the like, that's weird. What's doing this? That problem solving. I just get so energized by that. It's like a puzzle every day. I love working on those types of things. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'll work to the day I die.
I'm at the same point. I'm not sure if it's because I love it so much or that my wife has horses. Uh,
Oh,
she's younger and she owns horses, so you realize that I have learned one thing in our 13 years together. I've learned how to make a small fortune in the equine industry.
oh. Well, I
You
love
start with
it.
a large fortune.
And I learned that I can sometimes go pull my car over and I see horses and I'll hop the fence like on a highway where there's no
Hmm.
people. And if there's an apple tree, I can grab the apple
They do like
and
apples.
they'll come over and then I can grab their mane and hop on them and ride them around.
This is something you've actually done.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then you get off the horse and whatever, and then you go get another apple. They won't come back again.
Well, yeah, I guess you've kind of played the card.
Yeah, yeah. But I a big horse person growing up. Don't have any of my own. Never had any of my own. But I love. Or I want an aftershave that smells like a stable. So a little
Oh
bit.
man, you sound like my wife. That's crazy, bud.
Yeah, like an
She's like,
ammonia.
"Oh, I love the smell." I'm like, "Ah, her
I love
car
that.
smells like
I know.
horses."
That's such a manly smell.
I guess. I mean, I love them. I mean, and we have 2
And their
donkeys too.
nose. Their nose.
Oh, they're so soft and velvety.
Oh
How
yeah.
about donkeys though? See, we have 2 donkeys too, and they're even more fun.
But you have to be careful. Some horses, when they do bite you, they bite you where? Right.
Shoulder. Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
It hurts.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, yeah, I think we covered most everything here. Obviously, anytime you want to come back, you've got a topic, you reach out because it's like you're a wealth of information, and you've been at it. And I especially appreciate the fact, Bud, that you come from the research side, because I think there's a lot of practitioners that maybe just they don't have that piece of the puzzle. They don't look at things that analytically,
Yep.
and I
So
think that makes you an amazing
on the research
investigator.
front is 3D printing. So there's lots of technologies out there for 3D printing and the chemical emissions and stuff, and but that's kind of a new thing. So
Oh
we're
yeah.
doing some work on that, and we'll see 3D printers.
Interesting, interesting. Well, I think there's no shortage of constituents that are going to affect our indoor environments. And it's funny. We've been doing this for 30 plus years, and we haven't even. I think we haven't even brushed the surface of where we need to get, in my opinion. We
I'm just waiting to go up to the ISS. I want to
yeah,
go. I think we need to check
yeah.
the air up there. Here it really stinks, but
It's got to be pretty nasty. I bet it's.
yeah,
I mean, that thing's been up there a long time.
yeah. Houston, we got a problem.
Yeah, well. You know what? I'll be down here watching your mission. How's that? So yeah, so we're back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Our guest next week is Andrew Pace from the Green Design Center. He's going to be talking about healthy versus green, which that should be an interesting topic. I just wanted to point out that here we are at Healthy Indoors. Healthyindoors.com is where kind of our central clearinghouse for a lot of our uh, content, basically the magazine, Healthy Indoors magazine, all their issues. We actually are about ready to celebrate our 9th birthday, which that in of itself seems crazy that we're actually in 2 weeks we'll have been doing this for 9 years. It happened really fast. Healthyindoors.com though is a great place to get to that stuff. We also have an online global community platform that we launched a while back. Some of you may be watching the show here right now, but this is a platform that if you're not part of this, you should get involved. It's going to give you the opportunity to actually interact with people, your peers, other verticals in the industry from around the globe. So we're looking forward to a really exciting year with that coming up, and that's all the great stuff we got going on. Without further ado, I want to thank Bud Offermann for taking time out of his busy day to join us on the show. This is fantastic. Again, we'll see you next week, Bud. We'll talk soon, I'm
It,
sure.
it's been really good. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure. So the show will be available, the recordings immediately after the show on our community, as well as the audio podcast will be up there later today too. So
You're the best, Bob.
well, from you that means something. Thanks, Bud. I appreciate that. So I guess until next week, I'm Bob Krell, your host and founder and publisher of Healthy Indoors. Definitely looking forward to see you next week's show and every show thereafter. So we'll see you soon.